In 2008, there was a trailer for what turned out to be, in my not-so-humble I will fight you and everyone you love opinion, the best animated film of all time. The trailer told us next to nothing about the film itself, other than a couple quick shots of a robot collecting trash, which were shockingly realistic for the state of animation at the time, mind you. The entire trailer focused on the fact that Pixar was the studio making the film. Callbacks to several of Pixar's other films were thrown into the mix. The message was clear. We're Pixar. You can trust us. This is going to be great. And it was great. And Pixar continued to use this style of teaser trailer for its future films. Up had a similarly vague teaser, and Pixar has touted its studio name as its main selling point ever since. Pixar, according to its marketing, is the best entertainment animation has to offer, and its name should be enough to get you to come to the movies. After all, Pixar has never really made a bad film. This argument is fair enough. In fact, I probably agree with that statement more than most critics do, because I'm one of the handful of critics who adored Cars 2 and doesn't consider it Pixar's great failure. If I had to pick a least favorite Pixar film, it would be Brave, which I found to be a completely normal movie that never quite reached the potential it was going for and had too much hype around having a fairly standard, I'm not like the other girls female protagonist. But even Brave isn't a movie I consider bad. I often joke with people about least favorite Pixar film being the weakest insult I could muster for anything. Every Pixar film is, in my opinion, at the least good. So here's the weird thing. I don't care about Coco. At all. Frankly, unless the reviewers rank it among Pixar's absolute best, I'm considering skipping it and waiting for the DVD release. I could give some specific excuses. For one thing, I have no interest in watching the 21-minute Frozen animated short airing before the movie. Another reason that comes to mind is the Book of Life. Yes, I know Coco is not a ripoff of the Book of Life, and that the world can have more than one film about the Day of the Dead just as much as it can have more than one Christmas special, but so far everything I've seen about Coco seems ready to retread the same ground as the Book of Life in a less unique way. Neither of these reasons really work, though, because this isn't the first time I felt this way about a Pixar film. Here comes a fun confession. I have yet to see The Good Dinosaur. I missed it in theaters, and I just haven't gotten around to it or even felt much motivation to get around to it. I have no doubt The Good Dinosaur is an enjoyable movie, and yet I just don't care. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with Pixar? The issue isn't that Pixar has gotten any worse. They've been following the same rules to make great, well-crafted stories they always have. The issue, I think, is that other animation studios have gotten better. Pixar used to be an oasis in a sea of mediocre animated films. Some of you weren't even alive to remember this, but Shrek beating Monsters, Inc. for the first Best Animated Feature award at the Oscars was a huge deal and continued to be a controversial ruling among the animation community for ages. In the 2000s, our other options consisted of Disney's awkward "we're not really sure what kind of movie we want" phase, or dream, fart jokes, and overwrought attempts at being culturally relevant are us works. That's not to say that everything by other studios was bad, but Pixar was the only studio that was consistently good. But that's simply not the way it works anymore. Disney and Pixar work together so closely that one is hard to tell from the other in terms of quality these days. Every film Disney has put out in the 2010s has been well received. DreamWorks has also gotten pretty consistently good. The only films they've had below 70% on Rotten Tomatoes in the 2010s were Turbo and Boss Baby, both of which may have not been great, but I at least was entertained enough by not to outright dislike. Add to that studios like Laika, Aardman, Illumination, Warner Bros., Fox, and Cartoon Saloon, not to mention the rise in foreign animated films being translated into English, and the animation community is simply a lot bigger than it used to be. Pixar in the early 2000s was to animated films what Toonami was to anime, the only place putting out consistent quality. Now we have officially subbed anime out the wazoo, and Pixar is no longer the big fish in the small pond, and the world doesn't seem to have adjusted to this. Pixar is still treated like the gold standard by both critics and Disney's marketing campaigns, when it's just not anymore. This last summer, Cars 3 became Pixar's second weakest box office entry of all time, joining The Good Dinosaur in films that have made less than the notoriously overlooked A Bug's Life. If Pixar wants to end this concerning trend, it needs to get competitive again. Pixar needs to rebuild their marketing strategy to focus on each film's merits instead of trying to cash in on who they were 10 years ago. In a world where Pixar is equally matched by other animation studios, why should I go see Coco? What does it bring to the table that other animated films haven't already? Well, it's Pixar simply isn't good enough anymore. Especially if we're bringing more Frozen into this.